Wow, IndyCar silly season truly kicked off yesterday. You may have already seen my video talking about the fact that Helio Castroneves is going to Meyer Shank Racing full-time for next year, and not only that, Jack Harvey will be moving on from the team onto greener pastures, but at the time, we weren't exactly sure what those were. Well, since that video, there has been an avalanche of rumors and, let's just say, well-informed opinions about where the drivers in IndyCar are going to go and what seats are available, including who may be perhaps the hottest free agent right now in IndyCar, who is one Romain Grosjean, who is now going to be willing to run ovals, as he will demonstrate later on this season at Gateway. So, in this video, I'm going to try to piece together all the rumors and use some of my own digging to give you guys the clearest picture of where this may all fall as possible. But first, a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you today by HelloFresh, who has a super cool offer just for you. HelloFresh is America's #1 food kit delivery service, and with more 5-star recipes than any other meal kit, you'll know you're getting something delicious. Just like the excellent chicken sausage spaghetti bolognese I made my first night experiencing HelloFresh. And let me tell you, there's a reason that dish is in HelloFresh's Hall of Fame. Delicioso. I also loved that HelloFresh cuts out the stressful meal planning and prepping. This sweet and smoky pork tenderloin meal was ready in just about 30 minutes. And as someone who loves things that go fast, HelloFresh is a natural fit for my lifestyle. HelloFresh's pre-portioned ingredients also meant that there was no wasted food. When I made the Mamma Mia mozzarella meatloaves for a 4-person family dinner, we all had full bellies and no worries with what to do with the leftovers. Go to HelloFresh.com and use code LAND14 to get 14 free meals plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com and use code LAND14 to get 14 meals plus free shipping. And trust me, delicious food, fast and flexible. That's HelloFresh, baby. Check them out. Did that make you hungry? Because it certainly made me hungry. Okay, so here's the thing I want to do first, is establish kind of the hot seats that are available right now in IndyCar. Now, a lot of these seats, I think you could probably expect won't change from this year, but I think it's important to put these up on the screen and talk about them regardless. So, the 4th Penske car is still not confirmed yet. That's currently the 22 car occupied by Simon Pagenaud. Now, Roger Penske is on the record saying, yeah, we want to keep him, but it's worth noting there. Andretti Autosport is interesting. I've got them listed as having possibly 5 entries right now. I'll explain that a little bit later. I think for sure you'll see 4 from them. Rahal, potentially as many as 3. Racer Magazine yesterday certainly seemed to imply that they were headed are well on their way to 3 cars. Aero McLaren SP is another one that seems to be well on its way to 3 cars. A lot of people talking about the budget cap and some recent investment. I think from the Saudis, maybe. I can't remember. They got some recent investment, a lot of investment, and perhaps that will help McLaren realize their goal. Or maybe they'll go with a funded driver, which we'll talk about later. Obviously, the second Shank car, which we talked about yesterday, there's a lot of potential drivers that could go there. And as we found out yesterday again from Racer, that seat has not been spoken for yet. They do not have a driver currently under contract. And then finally, Dale Coyne Racing. And why that's important to talk about is the fact that Vasser Sullivan may well be moving on from that team next year. So it could totally be Rick Ware Racing dictating who are in both seats. We'll have to wait and see. But those are kind of the seats right now that are kind of the hot ones up for grabs, and the ones that are probably going to factor in the most to silly season. So the first thing I want to talk about, because you're probably clicked on this video to hear about him, is Romain Grosjean. So I see 2 possible landing spots for him. Today, in an article that wasn't about Romain Grosjean whatsoever, it was actually about the Vasser Sullivan partnership that may or may not end at Dale Coyne Racing, either 21 or 22. Marshall Pruitt put at the very last line of the article that Romain Grosjean is definitely not going back to Coyne, and he's definitely going to another team. So I think there's two landing spots. I think number one landing spot is Andretti Autosport. Obviously, Romain Grosjean, and this is a big part of it, is that he's a funded driver. He's got a lot of cash on hand. I think at the beginning of this year when he signed with Coyne, I think the talk was kind of his working budget was around $2 million, which is a lot better than a lot of other drivers that come into teams with funding. Generally, it's around $1.5 million that funded drivers bring. So Grosjean would bring a team more money, number one. And number two, he's obviously got that performance that everybody is looking for. Like, you're not just going to bring a funded driver into the team, you're going to bring a driver who can really perform. So Andretti Autosport, I think, is number one because they are looking to shake things up. They need the cash to get their entries in, as we found out this year, where Marco Andretti had only 5 races funded, I think, and with U.S. Concrete leaving, they ultimately decided all of them together is that, hey, Marco, why don't you just run the Indy 500, maybe a couple of races at the end of the year, and we'll get rid of the 98 car for the lion's share of the season. So that's also why I kind of think that if you had a Grosjean show up, and if you had a Kirkwood show up with, let's say, the Indy Lights cash, possibly a Vassar-Sullivan partnership, and possibly with DHL staying on for, let's say, the 28 car, you'd have a car that's very, very well funded, a driver, all that good stuff. Same thing possibly with Grosjean. And then you can talk about possibly a 5th car, because as far as I'm aware, James Hinchcliffe still has a working budget, still has sponsors, and, while I don't think necessarily it's a happy marriage right now, I don't really see any place else James Hinchcliffe would take his budget to. And I think a lot of people say this, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I'd be very surprised to see James Hinchcliffe totally hang up the helmet next year and go to the broadcast booth. I think he's going to try to stay in IndyCar if at all possible, and I think if at all possible, I think he's going to try to stay with Andretti Autosport. Let's talk about the Rahal team, because this was one that was quite a head-scratcher yesterday, because like I mentioned, I think on my community tab, is that Marshall Pruitt said that in an article yesterday that the most likely landing spot, and the heavy implication was that Jack Harvey is not only the likely landing spot for him, but will land at Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan in their second car, replacing Takuma Sato. And by the way, Takuma Sato, that's another driver who I think very much would be in play at Andretti Autosport. We'll get back to that in a second. So Jack Harvey potentially replacing Takuma Sato at Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. At the same time, Rahal is evaluating drivers for his third car. This was stated in the article. I'll put it in the description. Oliver Askew is one of the drivers involved. Apparently there's going to be a mystery driver testing at Barber along with Askew. They're going to do a bit of a gong show, so to speak, where I guess they're going to do some sort of a shootout. I was interested that the article did not state that Santino Ferrucci was in the discussions. That surprises me quite a bit, because I think it was Nick Yeoman who's been really keeping track of what Santino's been doing recently and really been pointing this out, is that every race that Santino has driven for Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan this year has been a top 10 finish. So I was surprised to hear that Santino, or at least that Santino was not mentioned in this. I still would question whether or not he's completely out of the running for a third Rahal seat, but it certainly sounds like Rahal is now deadly serious about doing a third car. Obviously, I'd like to see Oliver Askew get that opportunity, but there is another opportunity out there for him if he doesn't happen to land the third Rahal seat. I'll tell you which team I'm guessing Oliver Askew doesn't have a chance of driving for, and it's Arrow McLaren SP. And that's where I think we find the second Romain Grosjean potential landing spot. As I talked about, Grosjean has a big budget. And one of the things that Zach Brown has constantly talked about is to do a third car at McLaren, he's going to need a driver that can bring the budget to fill out that schedule. Enter Romain Grosjean. I've described Zach Brown as Hollywood Brown before, and the reason I describe him as that is because Zach loves big stories, big news. He likes big headlines, drivers who can generate publicity. More power to him, honestly. I think that's a decent way to do business. Actually, it's a great way to do business in modern racing. Let's put it as bluntly as that. And so when you think about Romain Grosjean, he fits with that McLaren IndyCar way of doing things, which is make a big statement, have a big promotional angle. I'm sure Arrow would like it to be able to promote, we've got the Phoenix on our team now, because they have a lot of those stories on their team, and they know how to promote the comeback story. And certainly I think Romain Grosjean going to a team which has Formula One connections would be good for the European audience. Obviously, the headlines that would possibly read "Grosjean goes to McLaren" would do everything that I think the promotional arms of these teams would want. And I really don't see who else could possibly bring the budget necessary to make a third McLaren happen. I guess the other thing would be, if there isn't a third McLaren, I think still Grosjean has an opportunity at McLaren, because we talk a lot about Felix Rosenqvist, and we look at what has transpired with their team in recent years, especially with the number 7 car. The turnover at that team has been incredible from a driver's standpoint. So it wouldn't necessarily surprise me, as unfortunate and unfair as it would be, to see Felix Rosenqvist get the boot and move on from Arrow McLaren SP. So I kind of see it that way. So that could be the second landing spot for Grosjean. Whether it's at the expense of Felix Rosenqvist or not, we'll have to wait and see. The second Shank car. So again, another article from Racer yesterday talking specifically to Michael Shank. Was that they don't have anybody signed. So the press release yesterday really kind of implied that they had a driver signed, but they don't. So apparently Simon Pagenaud would potentially be in the running for this. And if that happened, Simon Pagenaud would vacate Penske, and Penske would have an open seat. And Penske has already said that they're doing a 4th car. So could that be a landing spot of Romain Grosjean if we really decided to expand into Clown World? Maybe. But I would be surprised. I would be very surprised. It's kind of the same thing that I remember hearing a couple of years ago when McLaren was kind of serious about going out and getting Simon Pagenaud. Is that if Penske wants you, Penske's going to keep you. It's very, very rare, especially with returning drivers, with Penske, where if Roger wants to keep a driver, he usually does. So I'd be surprised, very surprised, if Simon Pagenaud left Penske to go to Shank. It would be a very strong team, though, if it was Simon and Elio. But the other name that Marshall brought up that I can't really see it happening, unless it's for the Indy 500 only, Ryan Hunter-Reay. Unless he really got a new lease on life with a new team, I kind of see Ryan Hunter-Reay being the guy who shows up in the 5th, 6th, or 7th Andretti Autosport car, or 8th Andretti Autosport car at the Indy 500 and puts in a solid performance, but doesn't run the rest of the season. That's kind of where I see Ryan Hunter-Reay. And I'll say what I said yesterday about Shank. I think they go young. So I think you look at Oliver Askew, who we know has been in discussions with that team before. I think Santino Ferrucci would be a driver who would fit in there. With that culture, he drives the way I think Michael Shank would want, though I don't know if he'd like the crash damage, and perhaps that's one of the reasons that maybe Santino's not necessarily in the running at Rahal, is that they want to do their car on the cheap and they don't necessarily want a bunch of crash damage, which is understandable. Could you have a Kyle Kirkwood or somebody farmed out to that team? Could a Devlin DeFrancesco come up and buy that seat? I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts potentially, and why not Romain Grosjean? I mean, we're just going to put Romain Grosjean in every team but Coyne at this point, but why not? He would be the kind of driver I think you would want for Sirius XM, and on AutoNation. I think if you were trying to promote those drivers or get them or get exposure, especially on like an international stage, that would be the way to do it. And certainly Liberty Media buying into Meyer Shank Racing is another kind of factor in that whole thing, where you think, I wonder if they would have a vested interest in that. So Dale Coyne Racing, we're going to finish with this. Dale Coyne Racing apparently is going to lose Vaster and Sullivan by 2023. Now, whether they keep them for 2022, I suppose that's up in the air. My understanding is that they're gone from Coyne, but we'll have to see. If Vaster Sullivan goes, who takes their place? Does Rick Ware, does Dale Coyne essentially become the Rick Ware factory team, so to speak? And the cars are numbered 51 and 52. And they have maybe Ed Jones stick around, because as far as I understand, he still brings a pretty significant budget, around $1.5 million to that team. So potentially you could have Ed Jones in there. Potentially you could have Pietro Fittipaldi. And I would think that Cody Ware would be someone you would kind of see in that second car, possibly full time. Again, they were weird about sponsorship this year. They found sponsorship to go racing at Road America, but they didn't for the Indy 500. So who really knows what's going on with Rick Ware? The other thing, of course, to consider with Rick Ware is that they've been long rumored to be selling a lot of their charters in NASCAR. So if they do that, charters right now are selling for $10 million each. If they have, I think they have 3 charters, so if they sell 2, they got $20 million. They could pay for 10 years of IndyCar racing with that. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? This silly season. It's getting crazy. And I didn't even talk about Foyt. Some people are implying that Tatiana Calderon is going to take Sebastian Bourdais' seat. I'd be surprised if that happens, and a little bit disappointed. But if it did happen, stranger things have happened. But I think, Foyt really needs a lead driver on that team, and I think Bourdais provides that for them, and I'd be a little bit scared to see what might happen if they end up with 2, fairly inexperienced drivers on that team. But yeah, exciting silly season. I don't know what's going to happen. This is nuts. I will tell you this. I think we're going to have way more than 26 full-time entries the way things are currently trending, unless a team closes or something, which doesn't seem to really be in the cards right now. You're looking at maybe 28 cars full-time, maybe even higher than that. And that's healthy, folks. There's no doubt about it. This is a lot of fun. The series seems to be healthy. Things seem to be going in the right direction. I'm excited to keep talking about it. And if you're excited to listen to me talk about it, let me know down in the comments section below. Check out HelloFresh, too. Thanks to them for sponsoring this video. This has been David Land on YouTube. We'll see you in the next video.